Hey, howdy, hey, how is everybody doing? And welcome back to Disney Daily. Zootopia is by far one of the most creative stories I think Disney has done in a long time. It takes audiences on a journey to a land where animals live just like humans, from their careers to their transportation systems to their personalities. Throughout the movie, we are introduced to different animals who all play a special part to the story, and one of those is a fox named Nick Wilde. Nick is known for being the local con artist who eventually has a change of heart and decides he will no longer be the sly fox everyone expects him to be. Now, while we do get some backstory in the movie in regards to why Nick became a criminal, as it turns out there is a lot more in terms of his past that was cut from the movie. So we are going to discuss his full story in today's video. Now, before I dive into Nick's past, I want to mention some really unique insight in regards to his creation. Did you know that originally Nick and Judy's roles were supposed to be switched? Initially, it was Nick who was supposed to be the cheerful and enthusiastic star cop of the movie. In addition, did you know that Nick Wilde's look was heavily inspired by Disney's more classic character, Robin Hood? Now, for those of you who may not be familiar with the older Disney movies, Robin Hood was also a fox. Many have even speculated that these two are actually related, but that's another video for another time. Now, with all that said, let's dive into Nick Wilde's history. In early concept drafts of the movie, I discovered that Nick's father was known as John Wilde. He was a loving and supportive dad who wanted to open up a suit shop called Zootopia with his young son, Nick. Now, as far as I know from the old concept art, the shop was open and operating at some point, but did eventually go out of business because we see a picture of an older Nick Wilde going to visit the shop. My guess is that the shop went under after Nick's father passed away, so his mom had to work more, and eventually at age 12, Nick started to do his own work as a con artist. Now, in Zootopia, we do find out more about Nick's mother, who was a loving and supportive parent as well. As Nick explains in the movie, the family didn't really have a lot of money, but young Nick really wanted to become a junior ranger scout. So his mother saved up enough money to buy him a uniform. From there, we know that the junior scout pledge meeting would take a turn for the worse. Unfortunately, the kids turned on Nick, putting a muzzle on his face, and the other animals didn't want him to join simply because he was a fox. And as Nick says, from that moment forward, if the world was going to see a fox as shifty and untrustworthy, then there wasn't a point for him to be anything else. So from that day forward, Nick pledged to lead the life of a criminal, and that's exactly what he did starting at age 12. Now, although Nick started to get into more criminal acts, he continued to go to high school and thrived there. This leads me to another aspect of Nick's backstory that many fans don't know about. You see, Rich Moore, one of the directors of Zootopia, revealed on Twitter that Nick and Dash the Sloth from the DMV were buddies who were on the same high school track team together. In fact, Nick actually calls him 100-yard Dash when he and Judy walk into the DMV. This is a secret nod to their history that no one really knows anything about other than the creators. Now, the reason I mention this is to prove a point that conning people was not his immediate goal and really truly wasn't his sole focus. However, the older he got and the more he deceived others, he quickly realized how good he was at it. This success made it harder for Nick to walk away from the trouble. So eventually, Nick landed himself into juvenile detention, which is where he actually met Finnick. And let's just say they weren't work partners right out of the gates. As it turns out, Finnick was 10 years older than Nick and was a rival con artist in the same area. This competition for who was the best con artist caused Nick to commit bigger and more high-risk crimes in order to make a name for himself and make more money. This deep desire to outdo Finnick drove him full force into the criminal world where there was no turning back. It was not too long after meeting Finnick that Nick made a bet and lost. But this wasn't just a normal and ordinary bet. This was a bet against Mr. Big. You see, the small but mighty crime boss gave Nick 6 hours to get him his money back. So Nick did everything he possibly could to try and get the money to Mr. Big, but unfortunately couldn't get enough of the money in time. So Mr. Big sent his polar bears after Nick, and actually not just Nick, but Finnick as well. And so after Nick realized Finnick was in deep water too with Mr. Big, Nick quickly concocted a plan on the spot. He requested that Mr. Big give them a chance to return double the money owed to him by sundown. So the two foxes were given the opportunity to get the money back, and that's just what they did. The two foxes decided to sell high-priced water bottles and were able to make enough money to give back to Mr. Big. This day was monumental for many reasons, and one is Nick established a new work relationship with his fellow con man Finnick, but he also started a new relationship with the biggest crime boss around. Now from there, we don't know all the particulars about why Nick jeopardized his relationship with Mr. Big. However, my guess is Nick got too cocky in regards to his conning abilities and thought he could pull a quick one on Mr. Big, which led to the demise of their relationship. Now, for those of you who watched the movie, you know exactly what I'm talking about. The incident being Nick trying to sell Mr. Big an expensive rug made out of skunk's butt. Now, although Nick's life was from that point on all about how much he could lie and make money, he did still have a good heart deep down inside. This good heart just needed to be touched again, and that is exactly what happened once Judy Hopps came along. Well, that concludes this episode of Disney Daily. My question for you is, who is your favorite character from Zootopia? As always, thanks for being my guest here at Disney Daily. Until next time.